It's the story of a young guy named Takuma Sakamoto. He's alone and always in his room, playing a game called Cross Reverie Online. In the game, he's playing as a powerful character called Diablo, who's a demon leader. Takuma hopes to get better at the game, and suddenly he becomes Diablo himself. Well, talk about immersive gaming experiences, at least he won't need a VR headset for this one. Now, he's sitting between two girls, one is an elf named Shara, and the other is a half-human named Rem. Takuma is super confused. What the heck is happening right now? Shara tells him that a summoning ritual worked, and they're in a place from the game called the Tower of the Falling Star. Takuma wants to ask the girls some questions, but he's really shy and doesn't know how to talk to people. But then, he tells them to be quiet because they're in front of the powerful demon lord Diablo. The girls are shocked that he's talking. Diablo asks them to shake hands and make peace. At first, the girls say no, but then they actually do it, and weird chains appear on their necks. Everyone is surprised. As Takuma follows the girls, he overhears them talking about a bondage ritual. He figures out they wanted to make him their slave, but it didn't work. He realizes he's wearing a special ring from the game that can block magic. So now the girls are his slaves. Turns out, Diablo's got a knack for flipping the script. They introduce themselves, but they're worried that the enslavement spell didn't work as planned. It did work, but in reverse. They all decide to go to a hotel. The girls start arguing. Shara wants to share a room with Diablo, and so does Rem. In the end, they all end up sharing a room. While they're in the room, a beautiful woman named Celestine shows up. She's the president of the Magicians Society in the city. He remembers that this name is in the game. The head of the Society of Magicians protects the city with a magic barrier. She wants to know what's happening with the girls. In fact, she has learned that the girls perform a bonding spell. Unfortunately, this spell has backfired, causing them significant trouble. While talking, Diablo behaves arrogantly towards the president, which angers the guards beside her because he's disrespecting Celestine. However, Diablo tells them to be quiet and assures that he will discover a solution to this problem before leaving. Nothing like silencing your critics with a confident exit. Maybe he's taking his in-game character a bit too seriously. Diablo realizes that Rem is keeping a secret because the boss is concerned about her. He asks her about it, but she doesn't want to answer, so he brings her to a room to question her. She pleads with him to stop, but he continues by playfully tickling her ear. She finally agrees to tell him everything, but with one condition: he must accept her and stay with her. He promises to stay by her side. She reveals that the spirit of a powerful demon called Krebskull is sealed within her. Diablo is shocked because this demon is known from the game Cross Reverie. Her seal garners a lot of attention because if she dies, the demon lord will be released and could destroy the city. Diablo vows to help her face this challenge and defeat Krebskull. Overwhelmed with emotion, she starts crying, as this is the first time she has heard such comforting words from someone. He goes to the city to be by himself for a while. However, he encounters the magician he met earlier today. The magician starts making fun of him, but Diablo doesn't pay him any mind and tells him he doesn't want to talk. This makes the magician angry, and he throws a wine bottle at Diablo. Well, I guess someone's got some serious anger management issues. Then he summons a giant monster, a level 31, to try and defeat Diablo. He's surprised because this monster is supposed to be strong, but it turns out it's weak. The monster attacks the magician, who's happy that he's beaten the demon, but nothing happens to Diablo. He reveals that his level is 150. This shocks the person because there's no one in this world with a level that high. He manages to stop the next attack and defeats the monster. Diablo introduces himself as the Lord of Demons who came from another world. The next morning, he wakes up and feels very sure that he's in a different world. He's surprised because he's sleeping between Shara and Rem, and his left hand is on Shara, and he can't move it. He's nervous and doesn't know what to do. He tries to get help from his right hand, but it's on Rem too. He thinks he's lucky. Then Shara wakes up and tells him not to do that. Rem is angry and teases Shara, which makes her mad, and she hits Rem. They decide to go to the guild, but on the way, he sees that the city is full of half-humans and elves, not humans. He asks Rem why, and she says this neighborhood is for half-humans, elves, and some demons. Humans live somewhere else but visit here sometimes. He also asks her how they measure a person's strength, and she says they're going to the guild to find out. They use a magic mirror to do it. Shara checks her strength and finds that it's at 30. She feels disappointed because a small Rem is stronger than her. Then, Diablo steps up to the mirror with confidence, but the Union starts shaking and there are earthquakes everywhere. Looks like Diablo's character sheet is about to reveal some seriously impressive stats. Or maybe the mirror just realized it's dealing with the Lord of Demons. One of the girls comes over because of the noise. This girl is part human, her name is Sylvie, and she leads the guild. It's interesting because the leader of the Adventurers Guild is a cute bunny, but that's not important. The main thing is that Diablo wants to join the guild to become an adventurer. Sylvie says his magic level is too high and asks if he's okay working under someone weaker than him. He agrees because he's just interested in the reward. Then she gives him a task. The task is to defeat a giant snake named Madara Snake. They go to the forest where the snake lives. There's no teleportation or anything like that, so Diablo needs to walk to the forest. After 5 hours, he arrives. In the forest, they find some elves. They want to rescue Shera because she's a princess from the kingdom of Greenwood. This surprise shocks Diablo. The elf accuses Diablo of being a slave trader and threatens him with death. Shera clarifies that she's not a slave. She just wants to live life on her own terms. She mentions that her brother wants to marry her for clan succession, but she's against it. This angers Diablo. The elves shoot arrows at him, but the arrows are weak, so he taunts them. One elf shoots a powerful arrow, a treasure from the Elf King. She warns him to avoid it because it's very dangerous, but he counters the attack and nothing happens to him. Then he casts a powerful spell that freezes the forest. Everyone gets surprised by Diablo's incredible power. A little while later, it turns out that the person he had an argument with yesterday spilled the beans to the committees and set up a trap for them. Diablo issues one last warning and the guy gets scared and runs away. At night, when Rem visits Celestine, she starts talking about needing to level up more to rescue Rem and break the seal. He also learns that if he dies in the game, he'll die in real life, so he needs a high level to stay safe. But suddenly, Shera comes close. She gets emotional because he's going to choose Rem. She gives him a hug, and it gets kinda awkward because of Shera's towering height. Meanwhile, Rem arrives and overhears everything. She beats them up and mentions that Shera is more efficient than her, which makes her pretty angry. Looks like Diablo's got himself into quite the rivalry, and he's the prize they're fighting over. The next day, they return to the guild, and this time Sylvie explains that Celestine wants to say sorry for the trouble in the Dark Forest yesterday. She offers them another mission as compensation. The task is straightforward, but the reward is generous. However, Rem refuses to join them because she doesn't want to owe anything to Celestine. She just wants her protection. Diablo tries to convince Rem to join him, but she refuses, so he decides to go on the mission with only Shera. However, on their way, they encounter someone named Emil. Emil claims to be one of the Adventurers Guild's most powerful members, boasting about being level 50. Ironically, Emil turns out to be quite ignorant and foolish. He believes false rumors about Diablo and wants to rescue the girls, challenging Diablo to a fight. Diablo eagerly accepts the challenge, excited to experience a real battle, just like in the game. The fight starts and Diablo is initially surprised by Emil's skills, but after a few moments, Diablo defeats Emil and tosses him into a trash bin. Emil feels desperate, thinking Diablo is weak. Well, that escalated quickly. Turns out, levels and trash bins don't always correlate as expected. Emil wants to keep fighting, so he starts attacking again, but this time, Shera stops the fight. The girls tell him what's going on, and he's happy that the girls are okay. He introduces himself again and says he loves all women. He says sorry and goes back where he came from. Then they go to do their task, delivering refreshments and wine to the Eula Bridge. But on the way, Shera wants to go for a swim because it's hot. But Diablo stops her because there might be monsters that could attack them. She gets scared and goes to him, which makes him feel really shy. Finally, they reach the Eula Bridge, but the guards block their way. It seems like even delivering refreshments and wine can turn into a quest of its own in this world. At first, they think Diablo is a goblin, but they discover that he is a demon who brings drinks and wine. The guard says sorry and explains that 100 goblins are coming here, making everyone afraid. Diablo gets anxious because this never happens in the game. He knows the goblins want to enter the city to bring back the Demon King sealed inside Rem's body. The guards are scared and worried. Diablo wants to go back to the city, but Shera looks at him with innocence, meaning he has to protect the people from the orc attack. Ah, the weight of responsibility, even demon lords can't escape it. So he chooses to stay and help defeat the orcs. A little later, the goblins arrive in big groups. He tells the guard and Shera to go inside while he faces the goblins alone. Someone mocks him for being small, but Diablo easily beats him. At the moment, Rem is with Celestine. She tells Rem that she has kicked out Galach, the magician who had set a trap for them in the Dark Forest. Celestine wants to question Galach about the demon Diablo. Celestine suggests that maybe Diablo really belongs to the goblins and was attracted to Rem because of the spirit of the demon lord. But Rem insists that this can't be true, as Diablo is a very kind person and couldn't be a puck. Suddenly, Galach shows up, angry because Celestine threw him out. He acts strangely and tries to harm himself with a dagger. This dagger turns out to be unusual and Celestine tries to stop him, but it's too late. When he attacks himself, a dark energy comes out of the dagger. Shortly after, a giant goblin emerges from the dagger and is about to attack. The guards form a defense, so Rem and Celestine manage to escape. A speedy goblin is determined to get rid of them. Sadly, the girls find themselves stuck in a dead end. The goblin says he uses Galach to get past the magic barrier. Rem summons a magic monster to fight the goblin, but it gets knocked out with a single punch. The girls are in big trouble. But then Emil, a man who really likes women, shows up to help the girls. He sees himself and fights the goblin with his sword, but his attacks aren't very strong. The goblin says he's one of the best magicians in the dark forests and is looking for confident fighters to challenge. Emil steps back but doesn't want to give up. He gathers energy to keep fighting. Meanwhile, Diablo is battling the goblin leader, Edelgard. She's really fast, but Diablo easily avoids her attacks. He tells her that her attacks are weak and she can't win, so she decides to use a much stronger move called Sacrificial Charge, which is known to be very powerful. Diablo knows he must deal with Edelgard's strong Sacrificial Charge attack to win the fight. He prepares for the attack, but nothing happens. Edelgard gets desperate and Diablo senses the urgency. Suddenly, news comes from the city that a goblin has sneaked in to harm Celestine and Rem. Diablo feels nervous because the goblin's plan was always to break the barrier and enter the city easily. Celestine understands the seriousness of the situation and laughs. She knows what's at risk. Diablo decides to end the fight quickly so he can return to the city and prevent a disaster. He asks his friends to hide and then casts a spell called White Nova. It starts as a small ball but becomes very powerful, changing the battlefield completely. Edelgard is overwhelmed by Diablo's magic. Diablo picks up Shara and they teleport back to the city. On the way, they encounter a strong goblin, but Diablo defeats it. Emil, determined to protect the girls, doesn't give up, even when the goblin attacks him. Diablo steps in, saves Emil, and gives Celestine a healing antidote for Emil's injuries. Now, Diablo is ready to confront the goblin. The showdown is about to begin, and it's clear that he's not letting anything stand in his way. The goblin is using magic to attack, but Diablo cleverly turns the magic back using his ring, surprising everyone. The goblin keeps attacking, but he can't do anything. He gets weaker and asks for forgiveness, but Diablo doesn't want to forgive him for being bad, so he locks the goblin away in another place and defeats him. Later, Diablo feels tired and worn out, but they take him back to the group. 10 days go by, and everything goes back to normal. Diablo is sleeping when Shara suddenly comes and jumps on him, making him unsure of what to do. But then Rem shows up and faces Shara. She defeats Shara and, feeling jealous, hugs Diablo. Just then, the leader of the group, Sylvie, arrives at the scene. Sylvie tells Diablo that the city's leader wants to meet him right away. The elves want to take Shara, or else there might be a war between elves and humans. The leader tells Diablo to stop the war and make things peaceful. The Greenwood Kingdom threatened war, and the leader wants Diablo to fix it in 10 days. However, Diablo refuses to give Shara away because she doesn't want it, and he sees her as his property. Sylvie also says that the Prince of the Greenwood Kingdom is offering a big reward for anyone who brings back Princess Shara. This surprises everyone. Diablo gets very angry at the prince's actions. He doesn't understand how the prince could treat his little sister like this. Diablo is clearly mad and determined to confront the unjust prince and make him pay for what he did. Episode 05. Diablo goes to the Lord's palace with Sylvie to learn more about what's going on. She reminds him to be on his best behavior because the Lord doesn't like jokes and is super strong, having beaten an army of orcs all by himself. Diablo gets surprised when Sylvie says they don't know the Lord's level, but he's definitely very strong. They reach the palace a few minutes later, and the Lord, whose name is Chester Ray Galford, says hello to everyone. Now it's Diablo's turn to say hi properly, but Diablo is really scared and nervous and doesn't know how to begin. Eventually, he says his name is Diablo and that he's here to listen. Diablo is glad that he identifies himself peacefully, but the Lord asks if he is really the master of demons. Diablo responds by asking if he needs to turn the Lord into ashes to prove who he is. This bold statement surprises everyone there. Shara says sorry for Diablo's actions, but the Lord just ignores it. The Lord explains the Greenwood Kingdom's strategy for both attack and defense. He says they have a small number of soldiers, but the elves can hide in the trees and set traps for their enemies. The Lord doesn't want to send the army into the forest because they might lose many soldiers. Instead, he wants Diablo to go alone and resolve the problem by bringing back the princess. But Diablo strongly disagrees and promises to defeat anyone who tries to harm Shara. The Lord asks Shara why she left the kingdom. She tells him everything, but he doesn't understand or feel sorry for her. Suddenly, a girl named Alicia Christella shows up. Alicia Christella introduces herself as a royal knight sent by the king to help with the problem. She gives Sylvie some gold on behalf of the king for what happened. Alicia starts to wonder about Rem because she does things alone and is really good at summoning magic. She thinks it's strange that Rem works by herself. Eventually, Alicia stops thinking about it because she doesn't know that Rem has a sealed demon inside her. Then, they go to buy magic weapons, and Diablo gets a new weapon to control his magic better, so he doesn't hurt anyone by accident. They also buy ingredients to make a healing antidote, but while they are on their way, they get attacked by bounty hunters, and Rem gets taken away. Diablo goes after the kidnappers quickly. Rem is kidnapped, Shara is at risk to be taken away by his pervert big brother, and Takuma Sakamoto aka Diablo is trapped into this creepy world. What happens next? To discover the rest of the exciting story, just leave a comment and ask for more.